Forget the rejects. Madrid finally have a Spanish World Cup player. Germany deliver a PTSD-inducing scoreline for Brazilians. The Blue Samurai and the Dutch play out a thriller. Côte d'Ivoire prevail in a dark horse battle. And Potter's Sweden are a problem? This is D-Mac Daily. Another epic day of World Cup action, but first, we gotta turn our attention elsewhere, cause what do you mean Cucurella is suddenly on his way to the Bernabeu? Yes, the Catalan La Masia Academy graduate has chosen the arch nemesis as his next home. This man is never beating the snake allegations. This is crazy stuff. Real Madrid are clearly not mucking around this transfer window, are they? Bar that Alvarez gimmick, which no one actually believed was a serious bid, Perez has been speed running their transfer business. I guess 2 years without major silverware really is an apocalyptic scenario in Madrid. So in the space of 3 weeks, we've seen some significant big names arrive. Jose Mourinho is returning to the helm. Denzel Dumfries comes in for 20 mil, a solid addition following Carvajal's departure. Ibu Konate comes in on a free, a player who has been heavily criticized throughout the past year, but ultimately strengthens Madrid's backline. A big upgrade on the outgoing Alaba. Shortly after, another surprising free agent signing via the Premier League in Bernardo Silva, a player who was heavily linked with moves to rival clubs Barca and Atletico Madrid. That was a bombshell signing, but this, on the other hand, just crazy work from Perez. Now, in the immediate aftermath, I'm seeing some wild slander on social media that this is a Galatasaray-esque transfer window or a Saudi Pro League type of spending spree. Can't say I agree with that perspective personally. I can understand that sentiment on Mourinho perhaps, because the status of the clubs he's managed in the last 5 years or so has declined. But considering the unique power dynamics of Madrid, I get the rationale of that appointment. Every other signing, though, I think makes perfect sense. Madrid's recruitment prior to this season has been heavily reliant on young potential superstars, but they're clearly lacking leadership and squad depth right now. These arrivals immediately improve the club in those two respective components. Focusing on Cucurella's addition though, and again, I think this is a relatively logical transfer. Fran Garcia is not good enough. Ferland Mendy is 31 and very injury prone. Carreras is a good left back in my opinion, but is guilty of occasional lapses in concentration defensively. Cucurella immediately strengthens the left back area in that sense. He's an elite 1v1 defender, one that is probably well suited to what Mourinho demands of his fullbacks, and is also a highly competent passer of the ball. Going forward, he's somewhat limited, sure, but he'll still chip in with goals and assists occasionally. Plus, Madrid have more than enough attackers to rely on in that regard. At 27, he's still got 5+ years, I'd say, to offer at the top. At face value, 60 million euros may seem steep for a left back, but considering the finances of today's market, I don't think Madrid are getting scammed here. So that's my analysis from a Madrid standpoint. Now let's look at the Chelsea angle, because on one hand, Cucurella was clearly unsettled at Chelsea. He publicly bemoaned the sacking of Maresca, he'd questioned the club's recruitment policy, and was formally open to the idea of leaving at the season's end. Considering he'll be 28 in July, which is like retirement age as far as the Blueco hierarchy are concerned, it's unsurprising that they've inevitably accepted this deal. 60 million euros isn't exactly pocket change, but let's not forget, Chelsea signed him only 3 years ago for 55 million pounds plus another 7 mil in potential add-ons. So the club have sold him in his prime for less than they paid for him, having seen the player improve significantly during his spell. Make it make sense. More concerningly, he's literally Chelsea's most experienced player in the first team and one of the most consistent performers in the side. With his departure, Chelsea only have one actual left back in the squad. Sure, Hato's capable of stepping up, at least in my opinion, but who are they going to replace him with? Another random wonder kid from South America? Like, if they don't upgrade on him, which seems unlikely considering he's the starting left back for Spain, then Chelsea are just being a less competent version of Brighton as a selling club. Perhaps the rationale here is that Alonso wants to play in a back three with wing backs and that they're covered in the left centre back department already with Hato and Colwell, but I can't help but feel this decision only takes Chelsea backwards. This club is crying out for senior leadership that isn't at a Rabayo. Instead, they sell Cucurella in a heartbeat, which is much to the delight of Enzo Fernandez, by the way, who literally liked Fabrizio Romano's "Here we go" post of his teammate leaving the club. We're a couple weeks away from his departure too, probably. The only way I'm coping with this sale in the end as a Chelsea fan is if the club brings in a competent replacement like Lewis Hall, who is a Cobham Academy graduate and one of England's most promising young fullbacks. But realistically, how much is he going to cost? And does he even want to come to Chelsea? Without UCL football, does this club have serious pulling power? Ultimately, I find it very difficult to trust the process when it comes to the ownership of this club because history has shown them to be woefully incompetent. Switching gears to the World Cup, and how freaking good is a 4-game match day? We are eating good right now, and where else to start other than today's opener, as Germany have inflicted the largest World Cup scoreline since 2014, when they famously destroyed Brazil 7-1 in their own backyard. This time it was Curacao who would be on the receiving end of a World Cup drumming in their first ever appearance at the tournament. Now, if you didn't watch the game, you'd think, gee, that must have been a thoroughly uncompetitive affair. But credit to the unfancied island nation of roughly 150,000 people. They gave it a real crack in the first half. A beautiful Mecha goal put the Germans 1-0 up early on, but for 10 minutes or so, Curacao came out of their shell with the momentum totally shifting. Comenencia then found an equalizer. The dream was alive and well until the hydration break saw the side lose their rhythm and Germany regained total control. By halftime, it was 3-1, and in the second half, the floodgates well and truly opened. Musiala scored a brilliant first goal. Great to see him back thriving for the national team. Remember, 4 years prior, Germany were a collective disaster, but Musiala individually was incredible, finishing the entire tournament with the second most dribbles completed. He, alongside Flo Wirtz, were in flow state with further goals from Brown, Undav, and another classy goal from Havertz to complete his brace. So 7-heaven for Germany in what was a very entertaining affair in Houston. The gargantuan golfing class proved too much for the small Caribbean nation to overcome. And as for Die Mannschaft, a lot of positives from this match. Both of their fullbacks, despite their vastly different profiles, excelled. No surprise Bayern are chasing Brown. He's a top player. The midfield duo of Pavlovic and Mecha were dynamic and in full control of this match. The star playmakers are looking confident. Undav came off the bench and bagged 3 goal involvements, and Havertz led the line expertly. We know he's got that clutch gene, but personally I think he can reach another level. Thomas Müller, one of Germany's greatest World Cup goal scorers, was adamant of Havertz's importance to the team, saying, quote, "I want to see Kai Havertz on the pitch every minute." So plenty to be optimistic about for Nagelsmann's side. However, it wasn't the perfect display either. Sane was off the pace and spurned a big opportunity. Tar was similarly poor. Wouldn't be surprised to see Rudiger replace him next match day. Meanwhile, in Group F, the Netherlands and Japan played out one of the best games of the tournament thus far in a 2-2 thriller in Dallas. A proper battle between the two teams, and it was a game of two halves, really. It was rather compact in that first half, limited opportunities. Donyell Malen was denied twice by the American-born Suzuki in goal, whilst the AFC Giants struggled to break down that daunting Dutch backline. Then, the second half happened, and it was a completely different story. Gravenberch brilliantly set up his Liverpool teammate Van Dijk to open the scoring, the first major tournament goal of the 34-year-old's career. At that point in time, I assumed the Dutch were going to take full control. They were the marginally better side in the first half, but then the game came to life completely. Nakamura picked up the ball inside the box, took 2 touches to set himself, and then let fly through Gravenberch's legs, deflecting off of Van Hecke and into the net. Game on. 7 minutes later though, and it was another moment of individual quality from the Dutch as Gravenberch found Somerville on the edge of the box. The World Cup debutant put it onto his weaker left peg and slotted home brilliantly. What a finish from the recently relegated West Ham winger. A huge moment for him, playing in an unfancied role on the opposite flank. He looked lively all game and then took his opportunity. However, Ronald Koeman would immediately shut up shop, taking out their wingers to play with a front two before subbing out Gravenberch for another defender. And in the end, Japan managed to snatch an equalizer, surprisingly, from a set piece too. Koki Ogawa leaping highest and finding the back of the net. Question marks to be had about the goalkeeper Verbruggen. I think he could have done better to stop the effort. I know it took a deflection off Kamada, but still, a top keeper saves that. Patrick Beach saves that for sure. Nonetheless, the points were shared. Not a terrible result for the Dutch, but they'll still be frustrated with the draw considering the quality and size of their backline. Conceding from a set piece is inexcusable. Fair play to the Blue Samurai though, keeping that AFC unbeaten run intact. Without Mitoma, Minamino, or their captain Endo, who was injured just a few days ago, they have shown a real fighting spirit. This result ensures their dark horse status remains firmly intact. Speaking of dark horses, and what a game of football it was between Africa's Côte d'Ivoire and South America's Ecuador. Both teams came into this contest full of optimism and high expectations. In the case of the Elephants, they'd had a spectacular World Cup qualifying campaign, topping their group without conceding a single goal throughout. And in AFCON, they were thoroughly entertaining to watch. Very unfortunate to bow out at the hands of Egypt. Meanwhile, their CONMEBOL opponents are experiencing their own golden generation. They finished in second place in World Cup qualifying, having conceded only 5 goals in 18 matches. The stage was set for a highly competitive game of football, and we got exactly that. Despite no goals in the first half, it was still a thoroughly entertaining affair. Ecuador striking the post on 2 separate occasions, whilst Enner Valencia missed a golden opportunity, and down the other end, Yan Diomande was at his scintillating best. This kid is a 1v1 menace. He started on the right and was breezing past Hincapié like it was nothing. In the second half, it was more of the same. Both teams striking the woodwork, chances aplenty down both ends. Diomande switched to the left wing and it was more of the same, just cooking his fullback for fun. Look, he's clearly not the finished article in terms of his end product, decision making at times, and occasionally the ball gets stuck between his legs, but for me, the hype is justified. He's been tearing up at Leipzig this season, and now on the world stage, he showed his fearlessness in his overall approach. Anyways, this game appeared to be headed for a stalemate until Singo, who had just been pushed into right back from the center of defense, picked up the ball inside his own half, skinned his winger, ran half the length of the pitch, played a ball into substitute Amad Diallo, whose delicate first time strike was perfectly placed into the bottom right corner. A moment worthy of winning a football match. I do feel for Ecuador in a way because I thought they were great today. Obviously that final third is not as strong as their backline and midfield, but they hit the woodwork 3 times, they gave it everything and narrowly fell short. Maybe this is a hot take, but I actually preferred this game to the Japan-Netherlands fixture. I thought Ecuador and Côte d'Ivoire were terrific from minutes 1 to 90. A great tactical battle. Full congratulations to Les Elephants. Do not sleep on these guys. Which brings me to Sweden, a nation who literally didn't win a single World Cup qualifier, but secured a passage to the playoff via their Nations League results and were able to somehow get over the line thanks to the managerial prowess of Graham Potter. Well, in Sweden's opening match day, they have proceeded to absolutely destroy Tunisia 5-1, which is all the more impressive considering Tunisia qualified in the World Cup without conceding a single goal. But today, their defensive prowess went out the window as Sweden put in a 5-star display. Brighton's Ayari opened the scoring with an absolute banger before fellow Premier League stars Gyökeres and Isak took over, scoring and assisting one another. It would get even better for substitute Svanberg, who scored with his first touch 17 seconds after coming onto the pitch, and in the last kick of the game, Ayari smacked in another belter from range. What a huge result for Sweden. Look, they were relatively fortunate to qualify in the first place, but they looked objectively unreal today. Gyökeres was beaming with confidence all game, and Isak got himself 3 goal involvements today. He still looks a little short of full fitness to me, but maybe this tournament could mark the beginning of his redemption arc, because a year ago, this guy was amongst the best strikers on the planet. It could be a redemption arc for Graham Potter too, off the back of 2 poor spells at Chelsea and West Ham, but remember, it was in Sweden where his career first came to prominence, and since stepping into the national team role, he hasn't put a foot wrong. He got the better of Ukraine and Poland in the playoffs, and now, in his first ever World Cup game, delivers a statement result to go top of Group F. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's episode of DMAC Daily. It's gonna be a long day tomorrow with Spain v Cabo Verde kicking off at 2 a.m. in the morning. But hey, the World Cup requires my sacrifice. Sleep is overrated anyways. Nonetheless, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.